Welcome to another episode of In Depth with Academia, the show where we dive into the frontiers of academic research so you can find curiosity, inspiration, and the occasional cosmic question right alongside us. I'm Richard Price, founder and CEO of Academia, and as always, I'll be your friendly, very human host as we explore the latest paper on our site. Today's episode is centered on a work by David G. Little, going by Swami Monamurti Saraswati, called Advanced Astral Physics, 12-strand DNA awakened by Kundalini. That's quite a title, right? Just a reminder, my role is to neutrally present what the paper explores, not to advocate or endorse it. My hope is always that you walk away with new ideas to think about rather than settled conclusions. This stuff is all about exploration. So what's the core question this paper is tackling? Well, at its heart, the paper asks, can spiritual practices like Kundalini Yoga trigger a kind of awakening in hidden DNA beyond what science currently recognizes? Specifically, David Little theorizes about the possibility of humans having not just 2 DNA strands, like mainstream biology acknowledges, but up to 12 energetic or astral strands. And he asks, could the activation of those through practices like Kundalini be a pathway to higher consciousness, spiritual evolution, maybe even enlightenment? Now I know, that's a wild ride already, and I'll say it once more. Academic papers like this aren't settled fact, they're invitations to reflection, sometimes bridging worlds that don't always see eye to eye. But the significance here is big. If true, or even partly so, it would mean that spiritual practice isn't just about feeling better, but about literally rewriting how we function and perceive at a fundamental level. Pretty bold, isn't it? Let's talk about some of the key arguments and insights David Little puts forward. First off, a lot of this work is rooted in yogic tradition, especially Kriya Yoga, and experiences stemming from what the author calls astral initiations. The paper builds on his previous concepts in Advanced Astral Physics by laying out 3 symbolic equations. Don't worry, I promise, this isn't all math class, but I'll just quickly give you a flavor. The first is Y and M times T plus S. That means yoga, the union of all levels of being, comes from mastery applied to time and space. Think of it as, if you master both your experience of the present moment and the vastness of your inner world yoga, or wholeness, just kind of emerges. The second, L, C times T plus S, describes laya, or dissolution, happening through collapsing time and space, a sort of meditative surrender where you dissolve into stillness. Then, the third, Z equals, let's see if I can get this right, collapse separated from mastery, applied to time and space. Z represents a 0 point, an awakened state beyond striving. Okay, that might sound abstract, but here's what it means for you. These are frameworks, symbolic blueprints for thinking about how consciousness could shift through inner practice. The real grounding for the listener is, Little suggests that dedicated work on oneself, through things like Kundalini awakening or deep meditative absorption, can set off a chain reaction, not just in the mind, but potentially even in the body, by activating what he calls dormant DNA, sometimes referred to as junk DNA in older scientific language. One especially tangible example he gives is the spinning letters Kriya, a meditative breath practice combined with mantra, where you move your attention through your internal energy centers, visualizing spinning syllables that awaken the supposed 12 DNA strands. Is this testable in the lab? No, at least not by current mainstream science. But it offers a symbolic path for seekers, an energy map, more than a molecular blueprint, if that makes sense. Here's where the science meets mysticism debate gets really lively. The author draws parallels between modern physics ideas, like dimensions, non-locality, and even CRISPR gene editing, and ancient yogic models of consciousness. He proposes that perhaps advanced beings, like the legendary Anunnaki, could have encoded ascension codes in human DNA, and spiritual evolution is about unlocking these using practices passed down from teachers like Babaji and Swami Satyananda. There's even mention of collaborations with scientists exploring non-parental DNA insertions in human genomes, so you get this heady mix of speculative biology, channeled teachings, and experiential accounts. Time for a quick digression. Has anyone else noticed how the language of science fiction and the language of spiritual transmission are starting to overlap more, especially in areas like DNA or consciousness research? Sometimes I scroll social media and can't tell if I'm reading a research abstract or a New Age cosmic meme. Anyway, back to our paper. What does all this mean for you, listening along at home, or maybe sitting in traffic, pondering your own purpose? Well, at its core, it's an invitation to consider that your body, your psyche, and your path might be part of a much larger, interdimensional story. You don't have to buy in, obviously, but the practices Little describes, like stillness, mantra, self-awareness, are accessible and non-dogmatic for anyone curious about exploring the edges of self-understanding. And, honestly, who isn't at least a little curious about their own dormant potential, whether that's DNA, energy, or just plain old unexplored creativity? Remember, I'm not taking a side about whether we have 12 spiritual DNA strands. Academic research, especially of the metaphysical kind, shouldn't be about dogma. It's about asking, what if? It's about glimpsing new models for meaning, even if those models aren't backed by electron microscopes or sequencers, at least not yet. So as we wrap up, I'll just encourage you to reflect. What would it mean if, through curiosity and practice, you could unlock more of what it means to be truly you? Would you try a new mantra, a breathwork exercise, or sit a little longer with the mysteries in your own heart? Sometimes, even entertaining a wild hypothesis can quietly unlock something real, if only a greater sense of wonder. Thanks for joining me for another adventure in depth with academia. If today's episode sparked curiosity or a new question, then my job here is done. Until next time, remember, research is never the final word, it's the first step. Stay curious and see you soon.